Iraq has developed spray devices that could be used on unmanned aerial vehicles with ranges far beyond what is permitted by the Security Council. A UAV launched from a vessel off the American coast could reach hundreds of miles inland. Unquote. Statement by President Bush from the White House, February 6th, 2003. B. Despite overwhelming intelligence in the form of statements and reports filed by and on behalf of the CIA, the State Department, and the International Atomic Energy Agency, among others, which indicated that the claim was untrue, the President and those under his direction and control made numerous representations claiming and implying through misleading language that Iraq was attempting to purchase uranium from Niger in order to falsely buttress its arguments that Iraq was reconstituting its nuclear weapons program, including, 1, quote, the regime has the scientists and facilities to build nuclear weapons and is seeking the materials needed to do so, unquote. Statement of President Bush from the White House, October 2nd, 2002. Number 2, quote, here they're talking about the Iraqi report, also failed to deal with issues which have arisen since 1998, including attempts to acquire uranium and the means to enrich it, unquote. This is a letter from President Bush to Vice President Cheney and the Senate, January 20th, 2003. Number 3, the British government has learned that Saddam Hussein, this is a quote, the British government has learned that Saddam Hussein recently sought significant quantities of uranium from Africa, unquote. This is from President Bush's State of the Union address, January 28, 2003. C. Despite overwhelming evidence in the form of reports by nuclear weapons experts from the Energy, the Defense, and the State Departments, as well as from outside and international agencies, which assessed that aluminum tubes the Iraqis were purchasing were not suitable for nuclear centrifuge use and were, on the contrary, identical to ones used in rockets already being manufactured by the Iraqis, the President and those under his direction and control persisted in making numerous false and fraudulent representations, implying and stating explicitly that the Iraqis were purchasing the tubes for use in a nuclear weapons program. To wit, number 1, quote, we do know that there have been shipments going into Iraq of aluminum tubes that really are only suited to high-quality aluminum tools that are only really suited for nuclear weapons programs, centrifuge programs, unquote. That is a statement of then National Security Advisor Condoleezza Rice on CNN's late edition with Wolf Blitzer, September 8th, 2002. Number 2, quote, our intelligence sources tell us that he has attempted to purchase high-strength aluminum tubes suitable for nuclear weapons production, unquote. This from President Bush's State of the Union address, January 28, 2003. Number 3, quote, he's made repeated covert efforts to acquire high-specification aluminum tubes from 11 different countries, even after inspectors resume. By now, just about everyone has heard of these tubes, and we all know there are differences of opinion. There's a controversy about what these tubes are for. Most U.S. experts think they're intended to serve as rotors and centrifuges used to enrich uranium, unquote. This is from a speech of former Secretary of State Colin Powell to the United Nations, February 5th, 2003. D, the President, both personally and acting through those under his direction and control, suppressed material information, selectively declassified information for the improper purposes of retaliating against a whistleblower and presenting a misleading picture of the alleged threat from Iraq, facilitated the exposure of the identity of a covert CIA operative, and thereafter not only failed to investigate the improper leaks of classified information from within his administration, but also failed to cooperate with an investigation into possible federal violations resulting from this activity. And, finally, entirely undermined the prosecution by commuting the sentence of Louis Libby, citing false and insubstantial grounds, all in an effort to prevent Congress and the citizens of the United States from discovering the fraudulent nature of the President's claimed justifications for the invasion of Iraq. E, the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence report on whether public statements regarding Iraq by U.S. government officials were substantiated by intelligence information, which was released June 5, 2008, concluded that, number one, statements by the President and Vice President prior to the October 2002 National Intelligence Estimate regarding Iraq's chemical weapons production capability and activities did not reflect the intelligence community's uncertainties as to whether such production was ongoing, unquote. Number two, quote, the Secretary of Defense's statement that the Iraqi government operated underground WMD facilities that were not vulnerable to conventional airstrikes because they were underground and deeply buried was not substantiated by available intelligence information. Number three, the chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, Senator J. Rockefeller, concluded, quote, in making the case for war, the administration repeatedly presented intelligence as fact when in reality it was unsubstantiated, contradicted, or even non-existent. As a result, the American people were led to believe that the threat from Iraq was much greater than actually existed, unquote. The President has subverted the national security interests of the United States by setting the stage for the loss of more than 4,000 United States service members and the injury to tens of thousands of U.S. soldiers, the loss of more than 1 million innocent Iraqi citizens since the United States invasion, the loss of approximately $500 billion in war costs, which has increased our federal debt, with a long-term financial cost of between $2 and $3 trillion. The loss of military readiness within the United States Armed Services due to overextension, the lack of training, and lack of equipment, the loss of United States credibility in world affairs, and the decades of likely blowback created by the invasion of Iraq. In all these actions and decisions, President George W. Bush has acted in a manner contrary to his trust as President and Commander-in-Chief, and subversive of constitutional government, to the prejudice and the cause of law and justice, and to the manifest injury of the people of the United States. Wherefore, President George W. Bush, by such conduct, is guilty of an impeachable offense warranting removal from office.